I'm from Cork, which is one of the most beautiful universities in the world, and I'm very happy to be here. We have a long history in using digital tools for teaching. And what I want to talk about today is, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about academic administration, and I'll go through that very quickly. It's interesting, but it's not as important as the later stuff. I'm going to skip over the interdisciplinarity a little bit because people talked a lot about that earlier, and we had a nice conceptual stuff. There will be more John Unsworth and Willard McCarthy. We will have the methodological commons will come back again in this paper. And so I want to talk a lot about teaching undergraduates and how we teach undergraduates. So first of all, the history bit and the quick bit. UCC, we had the first web server in Ireland. And we were home to the Celt project. So that was a first stage digital humanities project where we digitized lots of text and we did structural markup on it. And we did that from about 1990 on. And we actually created that text by using final year undergraduates. We taught them how to scan, we taught them how to correct the OCR, and we taught them how to do the structural markup. And so that's been going on since 1990 to build a corpus of texts with structural markup. And we also taught digital history seminars using things like the 1901 Census of Population. So that diagram up there is actually from a little village in North Kerry, and that was done in the mid-1990s by a student. It maps literacy. And if you know the history of the period in the late 1800s in Ireland, you can see from those numbers the point at which the school opened in the village. So we were doing that sort of work. And we were using Voyant tools back in the 1990s to teach students historical texts. So those two examples are from texts by Michael Collins, who was a centre-right Irish politician in the time of the War of Independence, and James Connolly, who was the Labour leader. And we were showing students how to use those tools to extract meaning from texts. So in around 2010, in Ireland, an opportunity emerged to create a PhD program in digital humanities. It was the Program for Research in Third Level Education, and so we designed a program for a structured PhD in digital humanities with a lot of taught elements to teach digital methods to PhDs in the humanities. We applied for PhD students, we applied for lecturers, we applied for labs, we applied for servers, we applied for new staff, and the government said staff no, labs no, lecturers no, infrastructure no, students yes. So we got 46 PhD students and nothing else, and we only got them in 1 year. So if you were fortunate enough to be around in 2011 and starting a PhD, you got money. But the people who came along in 2012, 2013, no money. It's a typical government program. This was a problem for us in UCC, because our university has a rule that you must have 6 students to teach a course. So if we only had 3 PhD students, the university would say, well, you can't teach that course. So, tactically, we decided to create a master's program. And that would give us enough students to put on the taught courses for the PhD. So the master's and the PhD students would learn the technologies and the tools and the methods and the conceptual introduction together. And that worked. It was fantastic. We have about 30 students in the master's program every year. We had to cap it at 30. More than 30, we had to stop because we don't have enough staff. Then the university decided that they would put on 24 online master's programs. Our university had no online teaching, and they said, we'll go from nothing to 24 master's programs. So they asked us to put the Masters in Digital Humanities online, which is fine, it was easy for us. We do online stuff, we did blended learning, but we couldn't, it's the same course, but the bureaucrat said, because it's online, it must have a different name. So you must call it the Masters in Digital Cultures to distinguish it from the Masters in Digital Arts and Humanities. And so we have all these modules, which are exactly the same. Some of them are face-to-face, exactly the same module online, but it must have a different code. So we have DH6022, which is the face-to-face module, and DH6032, which is the same thing, but it's online. The list of modules is amazing. The bureaucracy is terrible. But we survived anyway. And what we tried to do then was we wanted to get a little digital humanities teaching into the undergraduate program. And a lot of other places have done this, and this is a great idea. If you have a 10-credit minor, and ordinary undergraduates across the arts can do a little digital humanities, and you can bring the economists and the political scientists and the literary studies people, and they can all come together, have a little fun with digital humanities, learn some digital tools, and that would be nice. And that was all we wanted at undergraduate level. And for years the university said, no, can't have it. Well, we know why people objected to this. They objected because they were afraid we'd take their budget. They were afraid we'd take some of their students, which is fair enough. Also, every year is 60 credits. And it's like, you want 10 credits out of our 60 for your minor in DH? Which credits are we going to cut to give you 10 credits? So they said, no, no, no. Then suddenly, the government said, we will put up more money for technology courses. Then the university said, we need a technology course, digital humanities. So after 2 years of no, 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 suddenly the registrar turns around and says, now, 2 weeks, boom, we have a degree. It was amazing. So this is our teaching problem. It wasn't a problem, really. It's an interesting teaching experience. We have a 4-year degree. We designed it in 2 hours in my office on a blackboard. But because of the experience with the PhD and the master's, it wasn't too difficult to organize it. So we have the digital humanities stuff in, you can see the cursor here in beige. So we have concepts. We have the strand that teaches concepts and theories. We have a strand in the digital humanities program that teaches tools and methods. And then we have the strand that I teach, which is personal learning environments, which is what I'm interested in, and research methods and workflows. We had a slide earlier about workflows, and I love workflows. Workflows are important. There's an arts minor, English, languages, geography, whatever. And there's the bit the computer scientists provide us with, which is mostly multimedia. There's basic internet infrastructure, there's a bit of web security, there's Python. They teach 2 modules of Python, which is very nice in first year. The students hate it, but it's very important as a foundation. So that's how it works. There's a placement year, which our students like, and then there's a big final year project and stuff. So this has been, well, there's an interesting thing here. We get lots of students. We're now taking in about 40 every year, so we have almost 200 students in the undergraduate program. We have no new staff yet. There's still only 4 of us. Staff-student ratio is 55-1. Okay, so if you're complaining about your staff-student ratio, ours is much worse. But we have this lovely learning space. We're troublesome. Digital humanists in UCC have long been regarded as troublemakers, and we rock the boat, and we're interdisciplinary, and so on and so forth. So they gave us a beautiful lab, but it's on the far end of the campus. So it's very far away. But it is a lab which is designed, it's not a lecture room, the seating can all be removed, there are touch screens all over the place. We have mirroring throughout the room, which is very important. So I can stand anywhere in the room and put my iPad on the screen. I can put any computer in the room on the screen. So if I have groups of students at these desks doing collaborative work, and they have the app on their laptops, then I can just say, can we have yours on the screen? And they just go click, boom, it's up there, and everybody can see it. And that's important because right from first year, it's important. One of the things that we're trying to do is make people understand key values of the digital humanities. Openness, sharing, collaboration. We're trying to change their culture. And that's why this space is important. Because, of course, they're coming in at 18 from secondary school. And they've been taught to do their own work and not to share, that sharing is cheating. And we're trying to break that. So, you see students writing essays, and they're down here like this, and they're hiding their essay in case somebody else might see what they're writing and copy it. We're trying to break all that apart and talk about openness and collaboration. So, my part of this, what I do is I look at this workflow. And I've been doing this for a while in terms of getting students to think in terms of a workflow, because it occurred to me, I realized long ago that when students come into university, we give them a book list and a set of essay titles and we say, go write an essay, but we don't teach them how to write an essay. We don't teach them about the steps of the process. And I've been very impressed particularly by some of the stuff that Mick Healy in the UK has done on research-based teaching, where you actually model the research process in your teaching. You don't just tell the students about research, you actually make them do research so it becomes part of them. They understand it deeply. And to do that, you have to make the process explicit and the methods explicit. So I show them all this map, and this is the map, and there are methods and scholarly primitives that go with the different stages of locating information and identifying the arguments and working out the semantics and then telling the story. Because what we do as digital humanists, we tell stories. So the students at the end need to be able to tell the story, they need to be able to do the writing bit, they need to be able to do it collaboratively, and they need to be able to do it not just as essays, but as podcasts and presentations and all sorts of other media now. So over the years of doing this, because I teach history, but I also teach political science, and I've taught history of economic thought, I'm a very undisciplined person. I've always been a generalist. I've never been deep into a field narrowly. I've always gone wide. And therefore I've looked at things in terms of that across the different disciplines we see similar sorts of methods. So we try to, in literature is the classic one, where we annotate texts. We scribble notes in the margins of text, physical scribbling of notes in the margin of text. In things like art history, they don't write on the paintings, obviously, but they do annotate the paintings and look for similarities and patterns. Social scientists, political scientists do things a little bit differently in that they take texts and they add codes. So they have a different theoretical approach and a different epistemology. Very often they begin with the codes and add them to the text. And that allows them to go to visualizations, which are interesting. And this is actually a piece here. This is a piece of student work where I got students in my politics methods class to take a text and work through it and encode it and identify the themes, and then do this on paper, identify what are the main themes. So this is a student who's taken a speech and broken it into 3 parts, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and identified the main themes in the speech. And in doing that, then they're beginning to identify what are the topics that we want to model. What are the semantic issues that we would like to mark up in this text? And I think it's very important to teach students how to do the methods on paper. Make them understand the theory before you let them loose on the digital tools. Because if you let them go on topic modeling, then they're going to spend so much time learning how to use the software, they're going to lose sight of the simple, basic methodological things. And remember, I'm teaching this to 18-year-olds, so they have no idea of theory. They don't know what an epistemology is. They don't know what interdisciplinary is. They come into the class in September and I say, welcome to an interdisciplinary program. And they go, what is interdisciplinary? So we have to take baby steps. So text analysis, again, is common. Text analysis is used everywhere. And I like using Voyant with them because they can get results very quickly. So first year we use Voyant. They don't understand what's happening behind it, but they can see results. And then because they use Voyant in first year with me and the computer scientists teach them Python, when they get to second year, they've explored the limits of Voyant. They've got as far as they can, they have more questions, they understand how to do Python, so for them then, OR is easy. And they can go into learning how to use OR for text analysis, having some understanding of what simple text analysis is about. Obviously, everywhere now you see network analysis. People do tools for network analysis. In topic modeling is another one. If you look at the program for any digital humanities, big digital humanities conference, these things come up, these methodologies, GEFI, topic modeling, LDA, they come up all over the place again and again and again. There are, in fact, the same tools and a lot of the same methods are being used not just across the digital humanities, but across a whole range of other disciplines, where people are experimenting with digital tools and they use a particular tool, and you see the same tool. And then when people who are using the tool come together at conferences, somebody's using text analysis for history, somebody else is using it for English, they sit down together and suddenly you have an interdisciplinary conversation. So what I try to get students to understand is that disciplines actually have a lot of similar methods. And that what we're really looking for is a search for patterns to help us understand the world. And we're looking for patterns which help us explain how people act in the world. That's what we're doing. So one of the key questions we ask our students to bear in mind all the time is, what does it mean to be human in the digital age? And that requires them to think about things like their personal digital archive, for example. What do they keep? Where do they store it? It requires them to think about the, I've forgotten the word, the eversion of digital humanities, where the digital has come in and invaded all of their life. So that brings us to two things, obviously. Unsworth's scholarly primitives. I actually think that these primitives, this is a fairly comprehensive list. I've looked at methods and I find it very hard to find a humanities method that does not fit within the bounds of these scholarly primitives. I've added one, which is encoding, in the sense that the social scientists use it, to distinguish, but really encoding, the way the social scientists do it, in NVivo and MaxQDA, is very similar, I think, to annotating. There's not that much difference. But those primitives as well map to a workflow. Finding stuff, working out how useful it is, finding out what the argument is, and then at the end of the workflow, of course, he's got representing, which is, telling the story to people. So I use that, and I use Willard McCarthy's methodological commons, and there's really the basic data types. I think he nailed it in terms of the types of data that we have, not just in the humanities, but also in the social sciences. Different case in the hard sciences, but we have text, we have images, we have video, we have audio, but what else do we have? There's a limited number of different things. So this comes together then, and so I have the workflow that I take my students through, and the tools, but I tell them not to worry about the tools, because as we heard earlier on this morning, teach people to use RDF, but in 10 years' time, RDF may be gone. I get them to focus on the methods. So here is where we come to the money. This is the important stuff. Every week, week by week, topic by topic, what we do is I have the set of folders for the course, and each one represents a topic, and they roughly match to the workflow, and they roughly match to the stages of John Unsworth's scholarly primitives. And in each week, I ask them, this is an early week, so this is the first week, so this is the finding. So I ask them to reflect on what they know about finding sources. So I'm getting them to do a little bit of digital autoethnography. They all use Google, they all take the pages off the first results off the first page of Google. They admit this. I admit this. I start the conversation by saying I very often do this. They only use Google. They don't use any other search engine. Sometimes they use YouTube. It's interesting now sometimes. But so I get them to identify where they are, what they think they know. Start with the student. Then I ask them to read some theory. So I have a couple of research articles. Alison Head's article, for example, about it was a research project that was done for the American academic libraries about student searching behavior. And so I get them to read that. There's a couple of other harder research articles there as well, and think about how the findings of those articles relate to the student's own perception of where they are. And then I get them to do an exercise to go and locate and evaluate source material. So there is theory and there is practice every week, and the theory comes first. I'm going to skitter along here through these. So I get them to mind map in order to distinguish facts from argument and interpretation. And I teach them how to move, how to do that but also how to copy stuff. One of the big problems as you go along the workflow is teaching students how to move data between one application and the next. So mind mapping applications is a good case for this, because you have to, there are some mind mapping applications, you can produce beautiful maps of the argument that's in an academic article, but you can't do anything with it. There are others, and you can take the map and you can copy it into something else. So we get to this question early, the importance of moving stuff elsewhere. The importance of using tools like hypothesis. Again, this is the piece out of Blackboard for mind mapping, where there's a simple article on the theory and there's a more complicated article about knowledge cartography. So there's the practical, there's the sort of epistemological, and then there's the theoretical. And I've started making them map debates. This is an example from a professionally produced textbook, but I've started telling them now to produce visualizations like this of the debates in a humanities topic. So they can start thinking about visualizing. So they go from mind mapping to visualizing the argument. This again is where a student took a piece of text, highlighted it manually, gathered this together as themes, and these are the things. Then this was about the rise of the alt-right. So I made the students do this, find stuff, highlight it, extract the themes, and then you can have the conversation about saying, okay, now how would we embed these themes in a corpus of text, or how would we use these themes that we've identified to seed topic modeling? So you start off with simple, and then you get to more complicated. And then, so every week, this is roughly the structure. There's a reading, there's a practical, there's a discussion, and that flows through the sequence of the course. So the early topics are about research, then we have the analytic stuff, and then we have the writing and presentation, which is collaborative. So in the first semester, students who've never before done collaborative work before find that they have to do collaborative work, and not only do they have to write, but increasingly now we're asking them to produce podcasts, to produce video, to produce transmedia storytelling. And we're trying to do that so that they, and then in second year they do more advanced stuff. They do research planning, they do research ethics, they do surveys and analyzing survey data, so it builds up. But the idea is that they have an understanding of the process. We're not so worried about the tools. I tell them tools come and go. But what is important is that if they can do the practical, they'll pass the course. But in order to get better marks, they must understand what we would call the epistemological level. And if they want to get really good marks, they must be able to talk theory and understand how the three layers pack together. And it works. Mostly they all manage to pass. Not all of them are happy with the theory level, but they get there at the end. And I have it all in Blackboard, and we are very happy. To throw it open and share, I have examples of student work, and I'm quite happy to sit down with people who say, how do you make your students do that? I will show you how to torture your students at first year undergraduate level. I've been doing it for years and quite willing to share it all.
Hi, I've got a question for Mike. I'm Paul Spence from King's College London, and I run the MA in Digital Humanities there. So if you don't mind, I've got a comment and a question. The comment is that I was quite surprised to hear that your students find collaboration, the collaborative side of things, and kind of sharing aspect of things harder, because in my experience it's the opposite. It's that students, that's the norm, and it's the teachers and the institutions that have the cultural problems. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. But the question really is about Python, because we teach Python as well. It's also obligatory at the moment. We've had many debates over the years about whether it should be obligatory or not and how to teach it. And the challenge we've always found is that the standard way in which it's taught is very technical and not very humanities friendly, and that there aren't many materials, there aren't many models for teaching coding in a way that is really humanities driven. And I noticed you mentioned you had computing science people involved in the teaching of it. So how do you get over that challenge? How do you make sure that it's humanities centered?
I can tell you very quickly, it's a huge challenge having computer scientists teaching Python to humanists. The course has been changed 3 times, the Python course. We sent them on a Python for humanities computing workshop, and our students still aren't particularly happy with it. So the answer is that we haven't got it right yet. So I mean, that's the answer. The other thing I think about collaboration is that many of our humanities disciplines in the university are still hostile to collaboration. So there are some schools, I won't name any of them, but they treat collaboration as a crime. It's as bad as plagiarism. And so we're trying to struggle against that. And also a culture in Irish second level education, which is very much competitive. Because the exam at the end of the process, it's a question of whoever does best gets the points, gets into the degree they want. And that has an implication for us, because we get a lot of people coming into digital humanities and IT who did not get into computer science or who did not get into business information systems. So we have a lot of people coming in who are not really coming in because they're interested in the humanities. It's a back door for them. And we have to have a serious discussion about how we market the program and how. So it's great. We have people who've got jobs in Google and Microsoft and Accenture, and that's fine for them, but those are not the people. Somebody this morning said the question about there are not enough digital humanists. We're not producing them. And that's right. We have to think about where we're selling the degree on that one. So that's not really an answer, but that's where we are. We're not perfect yet by a long chalk. We have a long way to go.